Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Bonjour, Stefan.
Bonjour.
So happy to see you.
Yes,
How are you?
me too. Fine. Still 1 week to go before my annual leave. So great.
That's wonderful. I also hope to have some days off during this August. Really wishing to be there soon. Okay. So I will share my screen now. Okay, so welcome everybody. Today's session is about next steps on advanced textile. We have two excellent speakers. And the first one is Stefan Berin from Euromaterials, and he is one of our heroes during the first step of these morning sessions. You were brilliant with your information and your help outside even these sessions. Your help was critical in implementing quickly in Spain one French regulation. It was made just in something like 4 working days, and I think it was one excellent example of what can be done through this forum or through the collaboration between different agents at a European level. So thank you very much, Stefan. Now Stefan will speak with us about what are the next steps that they are taking in your area, in your clusters, in your companies. Okay, so should I give you Stefan the presentation rights?
Yes. Okay. Just a moment. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. If you could put it in presentation mode.
Yes, sure. Okay, normally it's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I will not talk so many about textile, but I will talk more about materials and materials clusters, because obviously textile is a part of the material sciences. And you will see that basically all the recommendations applies also for textile. What I will present is the result of a work we just done in France 2 weeks ago, actually, which was a contribution from the French materials clusters to the French National Recovery Plan. Actually, the French government asked to the AFPC, which is the National Association of Clusters, of competitiveness clusters, to provide the government with some recommendations for the French Recovery Plan. And obviously, this document has been, we provide this document. You can have an access to it through the AFPC, and I'm sure that Hervé will be really happy to send it to European Cluster Alliance. And so this document, which is basically 70 pages, no less, 30 pages document, there are some recommendation by sectors. So you have a recommendation for the automotive, for aerospace, etc., etc. And That's the main recommendations for the materials clusters. This work has been done by 7 clusters coordinated by Euromaterials and Materalia in France, and with the helps of Tectera, Plastipolis, Elastopol, ceramic clusters, and I forgot one, but okay. Anyway, basically in 2 words, first of all, for those which don't know us, Euromaterials is a cluster based in mainly northern France, Belgium, but as you see, we cover most of France, and which is a result of the merger between Uptex, which was well known in Europe for textile, and Matichem, which was a cluster more dedicated to materials and chemistry and green chemistry. So now we cover mainly all the fields of what we call the materials processing industry, because basically that's the main specification of our industries, which are all, for all those materials, we are materials processing industries with SMEs, which are mainly the main operators of those developments. So what we told to our government. First of all, we choose the titles. Materials are at the heart of the strategic issues for national sovereignty, and for today and tomorrow. Obviously, as you will see, most of the recommendations we propose to the French government or national authorities applied also at European level. And so we can really slightly change the titles as materials at the heart of strategic issues for European sovereignty. What are the findings? Findings are everything is materials. Materials are everywhere and serve all strategic markets: healthcare, mobility, building sector, energies, luxuries, sports and leisure, etc. But they're transversal, and the problem is that the transversal and upstream position of materials processing industries means that their roles are often misunderstood or even forgotten. Materials that are at the heart of innovation to transform ideas into concrete realities. So basically at the European and national levels, there can't be no recovery plan without materials, and no new materials produced without our processing industries. More and more solutions are multi-materials. We also use the words hybrid materials. We combine every day plastics and textile and metals and plastics, ceramic and plastics, etc., etc. And therefore, materials must be thought in cycle for the use, from cradle to cradle. We are also a key player, key actor in the green deal. Digital and ecological. Sorry?
No, please continue.
Yeah. Digital and ecological transitions impact the materials industries. And reversely, materials are essential for the success of these transitions. No robots, no sensors, no batteries, no hydrogen, no energy neutral buildings without materials. More important, recently the COVID crisis, which unfortunately is not over, has highlighted the key role of materials processing industries. Plastic for respirators, masks and visors, textile for masks, tubes for beds, forest wood paper for packaging. And also we saw in Europe and in France the absence of key technologies. In addition, materials processing industries are characterized by a driving role of manufacturing SMEs, splitted and scattered through the national territory. If you look in France, but I'm sure it's mainly the same thing in Europe, most of the materials processing, most of the SMEs in materials processing industries, they are not in the big cities. They are not in capitals. They are in small and medium towns where there's the most problems in unemployment. So moving on materials processing industries is also a way to create jobs where there's really needs jobs. So the first alert for us, which is something crucial as a follow-up, something also important in our alert and proposals. We didn't emphasize on all the issues that all the companies are facing, like treasury, like needs for clients, like risk of bankruptcy, etc., etc., etc. Because those risks are taken by the government in other issues that are national-wide. We really focus on the issues for the material sovereignty. So what we saw is that material value chains are at risk. Raw materials availability, of course, rare metals, but also polymers from specialty and fine chemicals, like medical grade polypropylene for masks, some palladium, diodes, Invar mini tubes for the electronic industries. We are missing in Europe the availability of those raw materials. We have also some absence of disciplines in the value chains in the materials processings. Like, for example, we saw that melblond, which is a kind of nonwoven, was missing mainly in Europe, and we were really obliged to import them from China. So our main recommendation at national level was to launch a national, but we can, of course, set a European strategic study for share analysis of those risks and critical points of the complete sector in order to identify solutions to improve resilience and security in the medium-long term. Of course, clusters should be at the heart and a critical support in this study. Also, industrial material sectors have a strong impact on the consumer market. Too often, however, those markets don't take into account upstream issues due to their lack of knowledge, means, will, etc. It's recommended that CSF, which is a French strategic committees, integrate the materials dimension in their actions. But obviously, at European level, it's the same thing. So many clusters or so many European technology platforms, they don't integrate materials issues in their reflections. Where they will supply, or they will supply, or can we secure the supply in Europe? I think is really a key issue at this period of time. Second alert is about raw materials. As I said, we do not have all the sources of raw materials in France or even in Europe, particularly due to the failure of the European chemical industry. We can say that unfortunately, the chemical industry mainly left Europe for other countries, mainly in Asia, where probably you can provide cheaper, but also you can provide with less regulations. And now we can see that we have a significant losses of autonomy. For example, as I said, medical grade polypropylene, recycled materials in PET, PP, PP, many very specific raw materials whose prices are really volatile at this period of time, and suppliers are few and few in Europe. And so we need to go outside our borders, and now we are really vulnerable. There are studies which are done on the situation of the so-called strategic materials, but mainly for the moment they're focused on materials like rare earth or some kind of raw materials. But we saw with this crisis that when we are talking about shortage, shortages. It's also with some some basic molecules like polypropylene. And so we need really to extend this kind of studies and to take actions behind. So recommendations are referencing at national and European levels the actors of the value chain for each materials, to develop mutual supportive interactions between large companies and suppliers and SMEs. Sometimes some companies which are developing, some European companies with large, which are worldwide companies like Total or BASF, or this, they are producing their raw materials in Asia, and either the European SMEs, they don't have an access to them. So we need to secure a better interaction between the large companies and the SMEs at the European level. And the last point, which is crucial, it's to support a strong innovation actions in the Green Deal materials, because we need to move on cradle to cradle. Our waste should be our raw materials tomorrow. So in that way, it will be also a way to secure our supply chains tomorrow. Number 3, innovation is a key. This crisis marks a new breakthrough for lots of SMEs. That the digital dimension has shown its effectiveness and can lead to decomplexing of companies to go further towards a transition in Factory 4.0. Processes, sensor, Internet of Objects, management software, databases, expert systems. We need to support the companies to move into Factory 4.0. As I said, the supply constraints demonstrate that we need to move in a cradle-to-cradle dimension. And obviously, with the recovery, differentiation will become a priority again in order to position on the market. If you are a company which is only, if you are in the textile company or a plastic company which is working only for the automotive market, at this period of time you are in bad shape, because the automotive market is really down and will not recover before next year in 2 years. It's worse if you are working for the aerospace sector. We know that Airbus, Boeing are now really on they don't produce anymore, because there are so many companies, there are so many planes which are on the ground that for the moment all the orders are stopped. So in relation to those challenges, we must therefore be offensive and support medium-term solutions that favor development of our companies by mainstreaming the flow of innovation through collaborative R&D. So we must help SMEs. We must help SMEs which are currently in innovation, because for the moment, some companies are already in innovation projects at national or European level, but are due to the crisis in financial difficulties. So we need to help them to go through the projects and not give up for lack of means. We need also to use clusters for financing and support innovation projects adapted to SMEs, like InnoSup. Larger InnoSup, stronger InnoSup at European and national level. We need to move to 60,000 K to more around few 100,000 K. Short projects, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 years, no more. 1 month of decision before, after submissions, etc. Also, we propose an idea to a government to develop innovation vouchers in this period, because in this period in SMEs there are people which are not working, people from R&D, people from production. Those people can be used to develop some prototypes, to develop some, to do some short-term innovation in order to prepare the future. We need to use this dead time. Last but not least, we need to focus and encourage the emergence of new startups in the material sector. Obviously, if you are in IT sector and if you want to develop a startups, you need, I will caricaturize a bit, but you need 2 geeks with 2 computers and you can launch a startups. If you are in the industry, you need investment. We are capital intensive industry, and rate of returns are lower than in biotech or in IT sector. So we need dedicated seeds funds for our industry at national and European level. Finally, and if I move to textile sector, what are the next steps at this period of time? Currently, obviously, we need also to ongoing and continue on activities which foreseen before. So like developing technical textile, like moving on more and more in coordination with the other materials. But currently we saw that there's issues in the healthcare sector. We saw that we still need some more efficient masks. Not obviously for this crisis, but also for the next one. So we need to invest in new filtering barrier. We need to also invest on innovation to improve efficiencies, to find new materials as substitutes of melblond, for example. We need to think also about the end of life of the products. What can we do for recycling masks? How can we organize that at local, national, European level? And obviously, at the end of the time, we need to rethink the industrial value chains because, as you know, in France, but it's the same thing all over Europe, there's a lot of companies which invest currently in mass production, tissue and community mass, but also in chirurgical and FFP2 mask. So we will, at the end of the crisis, move from a shortage of production to another capacity in Europe. So how can we guarantee to those companies that they will still be able to produce after the crisis? So we need to develop better coordination with public procurements, for example. For the hospital now still continue to order masks in China, ever that we can produce now in Europe. So we need directly and definitely move to a European first before ordering in China. So as you say that, but it was the first demand, it was about advanced materials, and so I really focus more on materials rather than textile. But definitely all our recommendations, all our findings, all our needs are the same. Either you are in textile, in plastics, in paper, wood, in metals, we are all facing the same issues. So thank you very much, and I'm really happy to answer any questions.
Merci beaucoup, Stefan. It has been a brilliant presentation. I subscribe everything that you have said, and I think that we need to review it carefully. Congratulations for the work done. Okay. Yes, we will come back to you, but first we will hear Robin Odon from Textera that will give us his own vision. Welcome, Robin.
Yes, hello everyone. Sorry, I joined a bit late, so hello, Stefan. So I haven't been able to listen to all Stefan's presentation, so I'll try to be quick and hope that our presentation won't overlap because we obviously worked a lot together at Tectera and Eura Materials during this period. So, can you see my screen?
Not yet. Now, yes, now we are seeing it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So, um, just before going to lessons learned and to the next steps, I would just like to make a few observations on the reaction of the market, especially the textile and advanced materials markets in this crisis. The first one, as in many other sectors, was the uncertainty regarding the demand, the market evolution, the regulation at work. These are questions that are still being asked by the companies. I think it's something very important to keep in mind. There's been, of course, a slowing down of the activity, with some companies closing temporarily or shutting down part of their activities. And I think Stefan also mentioned this issue. There's been important issues regarding the cash flows for companies. But there have been some positive reactions. We've been observing quite a few production switches among our companies. Regarding materials for textile protective equipment, so of course masks are the most obvious ones, and there have been very important mobilization of the industry regarding this issue. I think it's also important to note that this mobilization really came first from the industry and not first from the political levels. It's very important to show that this industry is very reactive and very agile. It's even so agile that some companies have moved from a B2B to a B2C production business model. So I'm not saying that they abandoned the B2B production, but they added a new business model to the one they had before. We've also observed some developments on antiviral treatments for textiles and the development of new solutions directly for the consumer, which is also important because textile industry and especially advanced textiles are more suppliers of other industry and not necessarily suppliers of the direct consumer. And the last thing is more of a general reaction of more industries and even of the general public is that there is a more consideration now for textile and material solutions related to sanitary issues. So what clusters the government companies have done during this period also shown that advanced materials are very important solution and that they are part of our daily activities, and they are essential to us whatever the time. What have been the actions undertaken generally by us, but also of course by the global sector? There has been development of many R&D projects. I've written that we have supported 12 companies in the development of their projects. So I'm certain it was the same thing for Eura Materials or for other clusters in Europe. So the reaction of the R&D teams of companies has been very strong, especially considering the fact that the deadlines for submitting the project was quite short. There has been a regulation, an evolution, and new regulations for textile protective equipment. In France, we created really new textile equipment for non-sanitary uses. So the regulation had to be determined. The materials to be used had also to be determined. It really was a new product, category. And also the importance of supporting companies for producing and or looking for textile protective equipments. It was something extremely important at the beginning of the crisis, and it's shown that well, it's something that hadn't really been considered before or that had been forgotten. In France, we had many stocks of protective masks that well weren't supposed to be used anymore. There's been a very strong collaboration with the government for textile PPEs, but also with other textile players on this topic and on the materials topic. So, for example, Ura Materials and us, we also worked with the IFTH, which is, well, among other things, a research center that has been involved on this subject. Sharing and providing information has also been a very important part of the activities, and not only in France for us and Europe, but also with our countries that didn't really have the same sort of structure, and maybe weren't as responsive as we were. So sharing this information is also something that can be profitable outside the EU, and it's also something worth noting. What would be the next steps? So I've just listed a few. I haven't written anything, and well, probably Stefan has already mentioned a few of them. But one of the first ones, and maybe the most important one, is to ensure that the changes that we observed, the positive changes that we observed, are sustainable. So one of the steps would be a production relocation for some of the textile equipment. In France, we didn't have the production of protective masks anymore, and well, everyone in Europe noted that it was something very important to have in this sort of situation. This production has been, well, in a way, relocated in our countries, and that's something we need to keep and to make evolve. To make it to evolve how well, as Stefan mentioned, while having better textile PPs, we need to make them evolve over time, because the answer had to be quick. So there wasn't really the time to develop extremely advanced solutions, which is the topic that we need to work on at the moment. We need to ensure that the new business models that have started to appear for our companies, and especially for our SMEs, are sustainable. So some companies are investing in order to make the mask production more sustainable, and to be sure that they will be able to continue the next year. So they invest in machines, they invest by recruiting people, they invest in supporting their new B2C business model. For example, during some digital transformations, there have been the creation of new marketplaces for textile PPs for the consumers and for the companies. Same thing, of course, for the work policies, and the products also need to be more sustainable. It's been a topic during the last couple of weeks in France, where a lot of non-reusable masks have been bought and imported from, I think it was China and Vietnam mainly, which was something that wasn't really understood in the industry, because, well, the industry was able to react and to provide this sort of materials while being cheaper and more sustainable and more local, but still there have been some imported orders for non-sustainable products from coming far away. So it's still something that really needs to be worked on at the moment. And of course, we also need a better management of raw materials and supply chain for these essential products. So this isn't only for the textile industry, but I think that Stefan mentioned the mind-blown issue, that the mind-blown procurement issue that we had in Europe for protective masks. That's also something that really needs to be taken into consideration for making our supply chain more agile and more suitable to answer this sort of crisis. Also, the next steps are R&D development projects. Many projects have been submitted both at the European and national levels. So results are still pending, but well, depending on the results, the R&D will be able to develop into many possible directions. And in France, we are also currently working on the creation of a new production chain for FFP2 or similar protective equipment. So I've been writing FFP2 or similar because I think one of the specification of FFP2 protective equipments is that they need to have very specific reactions to the fire, which wouldn't necessarily be an issue depending on the sort of projects that we would be developing. But yeah, that really goes with the fact that we want to have a better management and a better grip on the initial productions in Europe. And then the next one is partnership developments. So collaboration has been very fruitful in Europe and in France, and really must continue, not only nationally and at the European level, but also with third countries. For example, we observed that some institutions in I think it was in Brazil and also in other countries on other continents like Africa have been using the materials database that we developed with Eura Materials and the IFTH over the past couple of months, and that is something that they now use as a basis for developing textile protective equipment. So what we have done can also have an impact outside of the EU, even if it wasn't the main goal at first. And for all of these actions, well, obviously, we think that the support from clusters can can not only be important, but can actually be essential for ensuring proper development. And last slide for me. About this answer from the advanced materials sectors to address COVID-19. I think really the first thing that I would like to highlight is that collaboration has been the key to develop quick and suitable solutions, at least temporary solutions. And now we need to make all of that, as we said before, sustainable. So this is why the clusters and other network innovation facilitators have a very important role to play in this regard. The agility and the innovation capacity of the sectors, especially of SMEs, has been a key element to help coping with the sanitary situation. For many SMEs, it has been a way to maintain an activity and really to show that textile and materials industry that are often seen as very, let's say, traditional industries have been able to move forward and to evolve very quickly. There is a huge importance for producing essential products locally. So this, of course, includes advanced materials, and to have extremely responsive value chains. There has been a reassessment of how could be the societal impact of the textile and of the materials industry, as the general public, the government, and other industries have seen that these materials were really part of our daily lives, and that they had a central part to play in the development of sanitary and healthcare solutions. And well, finally, to link all that with the EU, with the current EU programs, well, the key points of EU programs have already actually been solutions to help dealing with the crisis. So how with, well, sustainability, for example, having reusable textile protective equipment instead of products that we would just throw away after one use. the digitalization of companies. Companies have developed new website for selling their products. New marketplaces have been developed in order to help companies find protective equipment, and also the global resilience of the sector with sometimes unexpected actions. We have the example of a company in our region that has been using an industrial area that was absolutely not used before, and with the help of people in rehabilitation in prison, have been able to maintain their production and to hire new employees in order to produce their new textile equipment. So solutions are very different. That they can be found sometimes very quickly, very easily, and sometimes on the longer term. But yes, the last thing I would like to say is really that collaboration has been the key over the past couple of weeks in order to structure the industry of textile and advanced materials, that it needs to go on, and that we all have a very important part to play in this area. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Robin. Again, an excellent explanation of what is happening and what we need to encourage in the near future. So we have a lot of things to speak about, to ask to you. First, I will open the floor to anybody that want to comment or question. Any of you, Stefan or Robin?
Yes, hello, this is Adrian. May I ask a question?
For sure. Welcome.
Thank you, Antonio. Yeah, also thank you, Stefan and Robin, for these interesting presentations. And my question is regarding the consumer behavior. So when the crisis comes to an end, and let's keep it simple only for the textile industry, so when more and more of the consumers are going to the shops again, so the millions across Europe, so in your dream scenario, in the perfect scenario, how should the consumers behave? Should they go shopping more, perhaps less? Should they inform themselves? Should they consider sustainability issues by going to their shops again, by consuming textile products? What would be the best possible consumer behavior? Thank you.
Well, I can start answering, and I'm sure Stefan also has some things to say. Regarding the consumer's behavior, it already has been evolving quite quickly over the past couple of years, and we definitely think that this is something that is going to support this change towards a consumer that wants more sustainability. But it's of course linked to different key elements. So, for example, just basically the price of the products. Many consumers are ready to pay more for more sustainable products, but some won't, or some just can't. It's also been an issue during the development of textile PPs. Some part of the population don't have an easy access to even basic protective and even cheap protective equipment. But yes, consumers will go back. Well, consumers already have been going back shopping, and the first thing I think we should say as members of the textile industry that we need to respect the rules that have been established regarding how the protective equipment must be wear. And it's something that I've been observing. I live in Germany at the moment, and something I've been observing in Germany and also in France is that the consumers, everyone pretty much, isn't as careful as they used to be, and as our industry has been reacting in order to provide solutions, it's quite surprising to see that these solutions are now considered not as important as they were just a couple of days ago, pretty much.
Perhaps I will just add points. First of all, we need to be careful because, as you said textile, but obviously clothing, it's only one market of textile. Of course, it's a big market, but it's only one of the market. And the textile industry is basically upstream of the clothing industries. One of the key issues is that the clothing industries most of the clothing industries at this period of time, or most of the clothes which are sold in Europe in retail are imported outside of Europe, either from Asia or either from South Mediterranean countries. So one issue is that if the consumer will slightly change and amend their demand to move to perhaps more quality clothes and which will last longer than before, and in that case it would be good for the European textile producer. If not, the question is if consumers are going back to Primark or H&M, or it's only increasing importation in Europe. So basically the issue is, will consumer will ask for more local, sustainable productions, or we will go back to the normal daily life like before with fast fashion and where we are producing more clothes than we are selling, and in that case it's a pure ecological nightmare and it will not serve our industry.
It's a question of awareness also, no? There is a need for increase the awareness of, in between the consumer of these selections. So,
yes, Antonio, can I make a very short question to Stefan? Stefan, you spoke about the materials and the need to control the materials. But I think that we have a long work to do in terms of a better management of information, where the materials are, how we can share them, and how they can be used in a better way in the supply chains. What do you think it should be done on a European basis to have a better information on materials and guarantee a better use of them?
Thank you for the question. Now, I think it's as you said, it's a huge work because basically we need to look at mainly supply chain by supply chain. It's why it's really huge work. Obviously, there's a lot of work which has already been done for some strategic issues like batteries, like composite materials, etc., etc. But with this crisis, we saw that either in the healthcare system or in a lot of industries or a lot of products which we are using every day, we saw that there's a need to look at the supply chain and how we can secure them. The problem is we rely too much on Asia and on China. And we saw that if everything is shut down there, it's all of our industry, and later it's all of our products which are in danger. So really, we need to look at supply chain by supply chain and to see, okay, what can we do? We talk about materials. If we were in a war against a virus, if it was a real war, we are not able to produce uniforms in Europe. So it's crazy.
I agree totally. Any other question, comment? I have one. I found excellent your proposals on terms of how to support the industry on this shift. Okay, and you commented, Stefan, that you are highly intensive in terms of investment. Okay, what kind of funding support will make sense to your industry at European level?
I think there's two instruments that we need to look at. Obviously, how can we support the startups through seed funds? Because basically we can find funds for the first round, but it's much more difficult to move to the second or the third round, where the company needs to invest, to buy some machines, sometimes to build a factory, and in that case, it's really they need a lot of money. And so they need a lot of seed funds and investments behind. So to have this kind of support for the startups, of course, perhaps from the European Bank of Investment, some kind of low rates or zero rates loan in order to support the industry investment. Because basically, let's say, for example, if we talk about, if you go back to the mask, for example, to produce a mask, the investment for production line is 500,000 euro, basically. To produce a span bond, it's 40 million euro. So basically, that's the issue. If you want to, we need to think about how can we support new companies on the market, because also we saw that a lot of new and fresh ideas are also coming from the startups, because there's new engineers, but after there's a lack of resources to help their grow up, and their only potential is basically that the idea should be bought by a larger companies which is able to go on the market. So how can we help the startup to go faster and to secure their investment and their development in the 3 to 5 first year of their life?
And what role plays Cluster on that support? Would you give us, both you, sorry, not only Stefan, Robin, what is the role of clusters in supporting these kind of companies, startups?
Perhaps just two words, and I will leave Robin answer, and after I will need to leave in 2 minutes for another meetings. But for us, actually, we moved from a standard definition of a cluster to something much bigger that we call, because we also integrate within Euromaterials an incubator for startups, and also with the sites where the startups can grow up. We are now also Science Park. So basically, obviously, we are still a cluster at the earth, but we integrate the startups support with an incubator within Euromaterials. But obviously, if we were not an incubator, it's true that startup is a key issue for all companies, because more and more you can say that that large companies are moving from a traditional inside R&D developments to more and more they outsource their R&D to the startups, and so they let startups doing the R&D and buy the most promising one. So obviously we need to look at what is happening in the world of startups, because it's a part of R&D and part of future developments are done within startups. And
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that observation. I see the same here. Thank you very much, Stefan, for your contribution today. Okay, this session will be is recorded, and it will be shared, and I am sure that a lot of people will appreciate it. Thank you, Stefan.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Bye. Ruben?
Yes, I would I would just like to add that SMEs have been providing very interesting and very reactive answer during this sanitary crisis. And well, as Stefan said, we need to support the startups, and really we also need to direct our efforts towards SMEs, because along with startups, they are the kind of structure that needs the most our help in terms of how they could structure their answers, or which kind of funding they can pretend to, which kind of partners they can find through us. So we can provide them a very important added value in this regard.
Thank you. Could you give us some ideas about how are you collaborating with other countries, for example, Germany? Would you give us samples?
Yes, with Germany we started working with them on regarding a project that had developed, well, two different projects that have led us to this idea of creating a value chain in France for PPEs answering the FFP2 certification. It's something that has been put in place in Germany in collaboration with organizations in Portugal, I think. But we would like to do something nationally in France in order to have a very the most local answer possible to this issue. So yeah, that's how we are collaborating with Germany at the moment. The very interesting thing about the textile industry in Germany is that they have very strong expertise on machine production. Probably the most they probably are the most expert country in Europe on this matter, which is of course very interesting when you want to develop new value chains.
And your collaboration is with clusters or directly with companies?
No, it's with companies for the moment.
But that's very interesting. We were discussing a few days ago, or just on Saturday, about this kind of business-to-business collaboration through clusters. Okay, so at the international level.
Yep.
So that's a good example. Very interesting. And could you speak with us about your the kind of collaboration that you have with your government?
Yes, it's been something very important, and it pretty much had become our main activity for a couple of weeks in March. So yes, the government and especially the ministries of healthcare, of work, and of economy. We've been working with them for a couple of weeks, and the first very important thing was the development of a new category of protective masks made of textiles. So a new category was created. It wasn't an evolution or a downgrade of FFP2 masks. It wasn't the same thing as medical mask. It was masks with new specifications, and two categories were created. The first category being the most protective one, and category two a bit less than that. And the idea was then to characterize the complexes and the materials that could be used for the production of these two masks. So there have been more than 100 and, oh, let me see, I think I have the figures, the exact figures here. Yeah, there have been more than 2,000 material complexes that have been analyzed, and the French Directorate General of Armaments, so which is part of the Ministry of Armies, analyzed the material properties and wrote more than 1,300 reports regarding these materials, saying that this material can be used or can't be used to provide a certain level of protection. So our part was to play the role of the textile experts, but also to help mobilize the industry and to provide clear information to our company. We acted as an intermediate, pretty much, between the companies and the government, helping to federate the industry to provide a cohesive answer.
And that role was critical, and I want to congratulate you for the work done. And it's not something that is usually identified as a role for clusters, so it merits to be highlighted.
Yes,
so,
it's interesting to notice that the government went to clusters and identified clusters as a hub for innovation, for information, and for expertise on a very specific industry. I think it's a very positive message from our government to us and to the role of clusters in general in Europe.
it will be interesting to invite somebody from your government to have his or her view for
that would be, I will see what I can do.
yeah, think about that, because it will be very interesting to have that reference. Okay.
Sure.
Anyway, thank you. Congratulations, really, from the heart. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Antonio.
And I hope to see you soon again. Tomorrow we will speak about. Sorry, I lose my reference. Okay, about partnerships on industrial modernization platform, creative industries, and you are invited to join us. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you very much.
bye. Merci beaucoup.
Bye.